Have you ever loved someone so deeply that the world itself seemed against you? What if tradition stood between you and your heart's desire? They say love conquers all, but what happens when ancient laws decide your fate? I am Obichina, and this is the story of how I lost everything to a rule that no longer exists. If only I had known. If only I had waited just a little longer. But the past cannot be undone, and regret tastes bitterest when served with the wine of what could have been. The rain hammered against my zinc roof like angry fists that night. Thunder split the sky, and lightning turned my small room bright as day for brief, blinding moments. I sat alone on my wooden stool, staring at the framed picture on my cracked wall. Nikemdalim smiled back at me, frozen in time, her eyes full of the joy we once shared. Outside, I could hear drums. Wedding drums. They echoed from the village square, celebrating another union, another couple blessed by tradition. My hands trembled as I picked up the broken kola nut beside her picture. It was supposed to seal our union years ago. Instead, it became a symbol of everything I lost. The storm grew louder, but nothing could drown the screaming in my head. One question haunted me endlessly. What if I had known? What if I had just waited? It all began 5 years ago at the New Yam festival. The entire village of Umuagu gathered to celebrate the harvest. Young men showed off their strength, maidens danced with grace, and elders told stories under the ancient Udala tree. I was 23 then, full of life and hope. I had just returned from the city where I learned carpentry. My future seemed bright and clear. That afternoon, I noticed her. Nikemdalim stood beneath the Udala tree, laughing with her friends. Her wrapper was the color of sunset, orange and gold, and her hair was braided in elegant patterns. When she laughed, the whole world seemed to pause. Our eyes met across the dancing ground, and something shifted inside me. I walked over, my heart pounding like the drums around us. She smiled as I approached, and that smile changed my life forever. We talked for hours that day. She told me about her life in Umuanu, the neighboring village where her mother came from. She had moved there as a child after her parents married. I told her about my carpentry dreams, about building houses that would stand for generations. Her voice was soft like flowing water. Her laughter made the festival drums sound sweeter. When evening came and the celebration ended, I didn't want to leave her side. I promised to visit her home soon. She agreed, her eyes shining with something I recognized as hope. As I walked home that night, I couldn't stop smiling. The moon seemed brighter, the air fresher, life more beautiful. Behind me, I didn't notice the old woman who had been watching us. She shook her head slowly and muttered something to the wind. Words I would later wish I had heard. The following weeks were the happiest of my life. I visited Nikemdalim every market day. We met secretly by the stream that separated our villages. She brought me food wrapped in banana leaves. I carved small wooden birds for her, each one more detailed than the last. We talked about everything and nothing. She told me her dreams of becoming a seamstress. I shared my plans to open a carpentry shop. Under the moonlight, beside the singing stream, we built a future in our words. One evening, her mother caught us sitting too close together. My heart stopped, afraid she would chase me away. Instead, she smiled warmly and told us to come inside for dinner. That night felt like a blessing. I thought nothing could go wrong. Love had found me, and I had found her. But love alone is never enough when tradition has other plans. 3. Months into our courtship, everything changed. I arrived home one evening to find my mother, Mama Obel, waiting with a face like stone. Her brother, my uncle Akena, sat beside her looking grave. My younger siblings had been sent away. The compound was too quiet. Something was terribly wrong. My mother stood up slowly, her wrapper tight around her waist. Her voice shook with barely controlled anger. She asked me about the girl I had been seeing. I told her proudly about Nikemdilim, about how much I loved her. My uncle interrupted me, his voice heavy with worry. He asked if I knew which family she came from. I said yes, from Umuanu village. My mother's face twisted with pain. She asked if I knew her grandmother's name. I didn't. Then my uncle spoke the words that shattered my world. Nikemdilim and I shared the same bloodline. Our great-grandmothers were sisters. We were forbidden by ancient law to marry. I couldn't breathe. The room spun around me. My mother explained through tears about the old taboo. Generations ago, the families of Umuaka and Umuanu had agreed never to intermarry. Some ancient dispute about land and pride had led to this rule. The elders said any union between the families would bring curses. Children would die, farms would fail, madness would follow. My uncle confirmed every word. He had checked the family trees himself. There was no mistake, no loophole, no hope. I fell to my knees, begging them to understand. Love shouldn't be bound by old feuds. We weren't even close relatives. My mother slapped me hard across the face. She said I was spitting on our ancestors' graves. That night, I lay awake, my world crumbling. How could love be wrong? How could something so pure be called a curse? But tradition is a wall built by generations, and one man cannot tear it down alone. When the news reached Nikemdilim's family, chaos erupted. Her father, a stern man named Okonkwo, exploded with rage. I heard about it from the village gossips who carried stories like firewood. He had thrown pots, overturned chairs, and sworn to the ancestors. He shouted that his daughter would never disgrace their family name. His wife, Nikemdilim's gentle mother, tried to defend us. She spoke of how happy her daughter had been, how respectful I was. But her words were drowned by his anger. That very evening, Okonkwo stormed to the village square and demanded an emergency meeting. The sacred gong sounded 3 times, calling all elders to gather. By nightfall, every important elder in both villages sat under the ancient Iroko tree. Oil lamps flickered around them. The air was thick with tension. My fate, our fate, was being decided without us even present. Tradition doesn't ask permission. It simply commands. The council's verdict came swiftly. Under the sacred tree, with kola nuts blessed and shared, the elders spoke as one voice. The taboo was ancient, unbreakable, and absolute. No union between Umuaka and Umuanu families could be permitted. Those who defied it would face banishment or worse. The ancestors would turn their backs on such rebels. Nikemdilim's mother wept openly, but her tears changed nothing. One elder, the oldest among them, reminded everyone of a couple who tried to break this rule 40 years ago. They married in secret, he said. Within 3 years, both were dead, their children scattered. Whether this was truth or warning, nobody dared to question. After the meeting, I tried to see Nikemdilim, but her father locked her inside their compound. Guards were posted. I managed to send a letter through a young boy. In it, I poured my heart out, promising to find a way. The boy never returned. Later, I learned her father intercepted the letter and burned it. The sacred gong sounded again that night, its message clear to all. Anyone who defied the taboo would know no peace. The weeks that followed were torture. I couldn't eat or sleep properly. My carpentry work suffered as my hands trembled constantly. Village gossip spread like wildfire. Everyone knew about the forbidden lovers. Some pitied us, most judged us. They said we should have known better, should have checked our lineages first. My mother stopped going to the market, ashamed of the stares and whispers. I became the cautionary tale mothers told their daughters. Months turned into a year. I refused every marriage proposal my mother brought. She would arrange meetings with eligible young women, but I would sit silently, my heart elsewhere. The elders began saying I was bewitched, cursed by my forbidden desire. Some suggested spiritual cleansing. Others simply shook their heads and called me foolish. But I held on to hope. Surely Nikemdalam was doing the same. Surely we could wait for a miracle. Love that strong doesn't simply die because tradition commands it. Or so I believed then. 2 years passed. My mother's patience finally broke. She brought home a woman named Adaze from a distant village. Adaze was beautiful, with smooth skin and intelligent eyes. She spoke well and carried herself with confidence. My mother praised her endlessly, saying she came from a good family with no blood connection to ours. At first, I resisted. But the loneliness was crushing me. I hadn't seen or heard from Nikemdalam in all that time. Perhaps my mother was right. Perhaps it was time to move forward. I agreed to court Adaze. She was charming and seemed genuinely interested in me. We talked about opening a shop together. She suggested I teach her carpentry skills. For brief moments, I almost felt alive again. Almost. After 3 months, we became engaged. The village celebrated, relieved that I was finally moving on. But on the morning of our traditional introduction ceremony, I woke to find Adaze gone. She had emptied my savings box, taken my jewelry, and disappeared before dawn. The shame was unbearable. Villagers mocked me openly. The cursed man struck again, they said. I swore never to try again, but my mother wouldn't relent. 6 months later, she introduced me to Onyinye, a trader's daughter from the next town. Onyinye was different from Adaze. She was bold, outspoken, and seemed fearless. She made me laugh occasionally, something I thought I'd forgotten how to do. We courted for 4 months. She helped me rebuild my carpentry business. Things seemed to be working. The engagement was planned for the next market week. On that day, the whole village gathered at my family compound. Kola nuts were presented, prayers were offered, and gifts exchanged. Then, in front of everyone, Onyinye stood up. Her voice rang out clearly. She accused me of being impotent, of being unable to father children. She said our private moments had revealed my weakness. The gathering erupted in shocked whispers. My mother fainted. Before anyone could respond, Onyinye grabbed the bride price and ran, laughing. It was all a plan. She had humiliated me publicly to extract money from my family. I stood frozen, destroyed beyond repair. The cursed man indeed. After Onyinye's betrayal, I became a ghost in my own village. People avoided me like I carried disease. Mothers pulled their daughters away when I walked past. Men whispered behind my back. The rumors grew wilder with each telling. Some said I was cursed by the water goddess for attempting forbidden love. Others claimed my shadow had been stolen by night spirits. My mother stopped leaving the house entirely. She spent her days weeping and praying, convinced she had failed as a parent. My carpentry shop remained empty. Nobody wanted furniture built by cursed hands. I survived on odd jobs, farming small plots, barely eating. The isolation was suffocating. Then one afternoon, a messenger arrived at my door. His words hit me like a thunderbolt. Nikemdilim was getting married. Her father had arranged everything. The man was a wealthy palm oil trader from Ohezekazi village. The wedding would happen in 2 weeks. My legs gave way. I collapsed right there in my doorway. The one hope I had secretly clung to was shattered. She was moving on, or being forced to move on. I learned the details from my cousin who attended the bride price ceremony. Nikemdilim's father had received offers from several suitors, but he chose the richest one. The trader, named Okafor, was 40 years old, twice her age. He already had 2 wives but wanted a younger one. He paid an enormous bride price that cleared all of Nikemdilim's family debts. Her mother had wept throughout the ceremony, but her father was jubilant. Tradition was satisfied, shame was avoided, and money flowed. My cousin said Nikemdilim sat silently through it all, her face like carved stone. She didn't cry or protest. She simply accepted her fate. The wedding preparations began immediately. Seamstresses worked day and night on her bridal clothes. Cooks prepared massive amounts of food. Musicians rehearsed wedding songs. The whole village buzzed with excitement. Meanwhile, I died 1,000 deaths. I wanted to storm their compound, to beg her to run away with me. But where would we go? How would we survive? And would she even agree? The taboo still stood. Nothing had changed except our despair. The wedding day arrived like a funeral. I couldn't stay away. I needed to see her one last time, even from a distance. I hid behind the thick bushes near her family compound as guests arrived in their finest clothes. Drummers played, dancers performed, and laughter filled the air. Then she emerged. Nikemdilim wore the traditional bridal attire, layers of beautiful coral beads around her neck, wrists, and ankles. Her face was painted with white clay and red patterns. She looked like a goddess, but her eyes were empty. They guided her to the center of the celebration ground. She danced around the ceremonial fire, her movements graceful but mechanical. I watched, tears streaming down my face, as she performed each ritual. When she danced near where I hid, our eyes met for a brief moment. Time stopped. In that glance, I saw everything. Her pain, her resignation, her goodbye. She reached up and unclasped a small bracelet from her wrist. The one I had given her years ago. She let it fall to the ground near my hiding spot. Then she turned away and continued dancing. I crawled forward and picked up the bracelet, my tears falling onto the dusty metal. Months crawled by like wounded animals. I heard stories about Nikemdilim's new life through the village gossip network. Her husband Okafor was harsh and unfaithful. He spent most nights with his other wives, only visiting her when drunk. She was treated like a servant, not a wife. His first wife particularly hated her and made her life miserable. She was given the hardest chores and blamed for everything that went wrong. Nikemdilim's mother visited once and found bruises on her daughter's arms. When she complained to Okafor, he laughed and said discipline was necessary. She reported this to her husband, but he refused to intervene. "This is her fate," he said coldly. "She chose to be stubborn about that foolish boy, so she must now learn obedience." Besides, the bride price was already spent. There could be no returning it. I heard all this and felt my soul tearing apart. This was my fault. If I had been richer, stronger, braver, maybe I could have changed things. But I was just a poor carpenter with cursed luck and forbidden love. Then, in my third year of loneliness, a rumor began spreading. It started quietly, whispered in markets and beer parlors. The elders were reconsidering the ancient marriage ban. Some progressive members had researched the family trees thoroughly using church records and written documents. They discovered that the Umuaka and Umuanu families were more distantly related than previously believed. The supposed close blood connection was actually separated by 6 generations. By any reasonable standard, marriage between the families should be permissible. The rumor said formal deliberations would begin soon. My heart, which had been dead for years, suddenly flickered with life. Could this be true? Could the very rule that destroyed my happiness be overturned? I had to know for certain. I sought out my uncle Akena, who attended elder meetings. He confirmed it cautiously. Yes, discussions were happening. Yes, some elders supported lifting the ban. But nothing was decided yet. Tradition changes slowly, he warned me. Don't build false hope. But hope, once ignited, cannot be easily extinguished. I began to dream again. The council meeting was scheduled for the next full moon. Every elder from Umuagu and Umuanu attended. I wasn't allowed inside, but I waited outside with dozens of other villagers. The debates went on for hours. We could hear raised voices, arguments, and passionate speeches filtering through the walls. The traditionalists argued that ancestors' rules should never be questioned. To change them would invite disaster. The progressives countered that the original reason for the ban was a land dispute long resolved. Why should young people suffer for ancient grudges? The head priest was consulted. He performed divination and reported that the ancestors were not opposed to reconsidering. This shocked everyone. After 6 hours of deliberation, the elders emerged. The oldest among them raised his staff for silence. His voice was strong despite his age. After careful investigation and consultation with the ancestors, he announced, the council has decided to lift the marriage ban between Umuaka and Umuanu families. Effective immediately. The crowd erupted. Some cheered, others gasped, a few protested. But the decision was final. I stood frozen, unable to process what I'd just heard. The ban was lifted. Too late for me. I ran like a madman toward Umuanu. My feet barely touched the ground. 4 years of waiting, of suffering, of dying slowly, and now the ban was finally gone. Perhaps there was still hope. Perhaps Nkemdilim could leave her terrible marriage. Perhaps we could finally be together. On the road to her village, I saw her. She was returning from the market, a basket balanced on her head, a small child strapped to her back. Our eyes met. Time stopped again. She froze in the middle of the dusty road. I stopped running, suddenly unable to breathe. We stood there, 20 feet apart, staring at each other. 4 years of separation, of longing, of unspoken words hung between us. I wanted to run to her, to hold her, to tell her everything would be fine now. But she looked away. Her hand moved protectively to the child on her back. Then she adjusted her basket and continued walking, passing me without a word. I turned and watched her go, my newly awakened hope dying with each step she took away from me. I couldn't let it end like that. I sent word through her cousin that I needed to speak with her. 3 days later, She agreed to meet me at our old spot by the stream. It was early morning, mist still rising from the water. She arrived wrapped in a faded cloth, looking tired and older than her years. We sat on opposite rocks, the stream singing between us. I told her about the lifted ban, about how we could finally be together. She listened silently, her face unreadable. When I finished, she spoke softly. The ban being lifted changed nothing for her. She was married now with a child. To leave would bring unbearable shame upon her family. She would be labeled a wayward woman. Her son would suffer. I argued desperately. I told her about her husband's cruelty, about how we could start fresh somewhere else. She smiled sadly and reached across the stream. Our fingers touched briefly. The electricity was still there. I still love you, she whispered. I never stopped. But love is not enough, Obichina. Not for people like us. A villager walking past saw us holding hands. Within hours, the gossip had spread everywhere. Okafor heard the rumors that same evening. He came home drunk and furious. Nikemdilim's screams echoed through the compound. Neighbors heard but didn't intervene. A man disciplining his wife was private business. He beat her viciously, accusing her of adultery and disrespect. She tried to explain that we only talked, but his fists were already flying. She protected her child with her body, taking blow after blow. His other wives watched silently, some satisfied to see her humiliated. When he finally tired, he locked her in a room and forbade her from leaving the compound. The next morning, Nikemdilim's mother found her daughter bruised and sobbing. She tried to take her away, but Okafor refused. He had paid bride price, he roared. She belonged to him now. The law and tradition supported him. When I heard what happened, rage consumed me. I wanted to kill him with my bare hands. But what could I do? He was wealthy and connected. I was the cursed carpenter. Still, I swore to myself that I would find a way to rescue her. The ban was lifted. We had the right to be together now. I just needed to convince the world of that. I went before the Council of Elders, the same ones who had just lifted the marriage ban. I knelt in the center of the gathering and pleaded my case. I reminded them of their decision to end the old taboo. I spoke of Nikemdilim's suffering in her forced marriage. I asked them to intervene, to help free her so we could finally marry properly. Some elders listened sympathetically. The progressive ones nodded in agreement. Yes, the ban was lifted, they said. Yes, she should have the right to choose. But then Nikemdilim's father stormed into the meeting. His face was twisted with rage. He pointed at me and shouted that I was a troublemaker trying to destroy his family's honor. His daughter was properly married, he thundered. Bride price was paid and accepted. I had no claim to her whatsoever. The lifting of the ban didn't erase existing marriages. Other conservative elders agreed with him. Custom dictated that a married woman remained married. To help her leave would set a dangerous precedent. Young wives everywhere would start rebelling. The head elder ruled against me. They could not intervene in a legal marriage. I left the meeting crushed, my last hope shattered against tradition's unyielding wall. But Nikemdilim tried. One night, 2 weeks after my failed plea to the elders, she attempted to escape. She waited until Okafor and his other wives were asleep. She wrapped her son tightly against her chest, gathered a few belongings, and slipped out through a back fence. She ran through the darkness toward our meeting spot by the stream. I was there waiting, as I had been every night since our last meeting, hoping she would come. I saw her emerge from the bushes, panting and frightened. My heart soared. We were finally going to be together. I reached out to take her hand. Then torches appeared behind her. Okafor had woken up and discovered her missing. He came with his brothers and some village men. They surrounded us quickly. Okafor grabbed Nikemdalim roughly, yanking her away from me. She screamed and struggled, but they were too many. They dragged her back toward the village. I tried to follow, to fight, but two men held me back. If you value your life, one warned, stay away from another man's wife. I watched helplessly as they took her, her screams fading into the night. A month later, the village held a grand celebration. The marriage ban was officially lifted with a huge ceremony. Young couples who had been waiting could now marry freely. There was dancing, feasting, and joy. The elders congratulated themselves on their progressive thinking. Traditional marriage songs filled the air with messages of love conquering all obstacles. I stood at the edge of the celebration, watching like a ghost. All around me, happy couples held hands and made plans. The very freedom I had fought for was being celebrated, but I couldn't share in the joy. My freedom had come too late. Across the dancing ground, I saw her. Nikemdalim stood with Okafor's family, her bruises covered with makeup. She held her son on her hip while Okafor laughed with other men. Our eyes met through the crowd. In that moment, we shared the cruelest truth. The ban was lifted. We were finally free to love. But we were no longer free to be together. She looked away first, back to her son, her duty, her prison. I turned and walked away from the celebration, the drums mocking every step. I couldn't bear it anymore. I had to speak to her one final time. I waited for her at the market 3 days later. When she appeared, I approached her directly despite people watching. She tried to walk past me, but I gently blocked her path. People stared, whispered, but I didn't care anymore. Please, I said quietly. Just give me one moment. She stopped, her shoulders sagging with exhaustion. We stood in the middle of the busy market, the world moving around us. I asked her if she regretted us, if she wished we had never met. She looked up at me with tears in her eyes. Never, she whispered. I could never regret loving you. But she said she did regret one thing. She regretted that we obeyed. We obeyed our parents, the elders, the tradition. We let fear decide our fate. The ban was not really from the ancestors, she said. It was from people. Old, scared people protecting old, scared ideas. Our love was never cursed, Obichina. It was only delayed by fear. She touched my hand briefly. Then she walked away, disappearing into the crowd. I never saw her again after that day. 5 years have passed since then. I still live alone in my small house. The carpentry shop runs modestly. I never married. My mother gave up trying to find me a wife. Sometimes villagers ask why I remain single now that the ban is lifted. I just smile and change the subject. Tonight, as rain pounds my roof and thunder shakes the walls, I sit staring at Nikemdalim's picture. Her bracelet lies beside the oil lamp. Wedding drums echo from somewhere in the village, celebrating someone else's happiness. I pick up the broken kola nut, the one that should have blessed our union. If only I had known. If only I had known the ban would be lifted just a few years later. If only I had been brave enough to run away with her when we had the chance. If only I hadn't let fear and tradition steal my future. These are the words that haunt my nights. The storm rages outside, but the real storm is inside me. It never stops. It never will. Because regret, I have learned, is the cruelest punishment of all. It keeps you alive while slowly killing everything that once made life worth living. Moral lesson. Tradition should serve the people, not enslave them. When culture demands the sacrifice of genuine love and human happiness, it stops being wisdom and becomes cruelty. Fear of breaking old rules can be more destructive than breaking them. The ancestors may have their reasons, but the living have theirs too. And sometimes, the bravest thing you can do is question what everyone accepts. Because by the time tradition changes its mind, your life may have already passed you by. Love delayed is love denied, and no amount of lifted bans can resurrect what fear has already buried.